Well, my friends, in another installment of my revisitation of MERP's Middle Earth role-playing game system produced by ICE, Iron Crown Enterprises. You know, not too long ago, Tim of the famed Samwise 7 had posted a picture of Minas Tirith produced by ICE for the game, and I commented that I have that particular map and I have the book to go with it. Of course, make a claim and then put your foot in your mouth. I have the map. I don't know where it went. I've still got a lot of stuff that's in storage, and with recent events, a lot of it had to go back into storage. But I did find a part of my collection of maps to go with it, the game itself, and they are beautiful maps, no questions about it. This particular map is part of Polyker. It's a source book for a city that's down south in Gondor. It's actually half a map. Here's half the city map. The other half's sitting here in my folder of MERP maps, which I don't know how you store your stuff, and a lot of people have the different way of doing it. Some people just toss it in things, leave it on the shelf, put it back at the book it came out of, which is usually probably a smart thing as long as it stays in the book. My concern was that my stuff had a habit of migrating, and so I found ways. I just put a few holes in it, put some protecting binders on them, and then stuck them in the notebooks. That way they don't migrate, because they're beautiful things. Like I said, few game systems today match the map work of the older systems, and I challenge you to that. Matter of fact, I'm going to do a whole bit on that, I think, here in the near future, because not only does ICE maps, but the old Forgotten Realms maps are very nice. So are the Judges Guilds. Judges Guilds maps are even older school, less color in them, but a lot of detail, lots of detail. And I can think of about 3 dozen different game systems that have really good maps from the earlier days. Today, not so much. A lot of times it's got to do with money or trying to, save a buck, I guess. What are you going to do? But to go with the map that Tim posted up there on the RPG Brigade is the source book. Now, this is the only hardback source book that ICE produced for MERP, as far as I'm aware of. Now, there may have been one that came out after I started collecting these things, but I never saw it, because if I saw it, I'd have grabbed it. Excuse me. Published in 1988 by ICE, of course. Minas Tirith, the City of the Guard. This was supposed to be part of their Cities of Middle Earth series, which I have several installments. As the game system started to peter out, there were so many yet untapped locations that they could have done works like this on that they didn't. Like I said, I don't know all the story about why that is, but it happens to a lot of game systems if you think about it. Most of them come and they go, and at some point, the loyal fan base gets suckered into another game system, and it carries over. The exception to the rule today is, of course, the Gorilla, and that's D&D, and that's because it's so huge, it's so vast. Even when you go somewhere away from the truck stop, I get heavy traffic. What do you do? Right? Anyway, we talk about, there was a blog and some comments in the brigade a couple months ago going on about cities and games, and one of the best cities by design outside of the Judges Guild stuff, and I'm just being truthful, has to be, and of course, Waterdeep in Forgotten Realms, which is entire box sets by itself, is Minas Tirith, and they go into great detail and elaborate information, not just on the various shops and stuff, but they want you to know what it's like to live, what it was like to live in the city at the time, who was in charge, what they did, the construction, the process, the life of the Dunedain and the lesser Gondorians, the urban men in the countryside, the Dunlendings, and so on and so forth. Harland, of course, that's their port. Talks about the roads. We have a weather table here. which shows up in a lot of MERP books that don't show up in a lot of other books. D&D talks about weather, it's a very tiny blurb about it, and it leaves it up to DMs to really enhance that. I don't know as a I don't know as a GM how much you guys use weather in your campaigns as an obstacle, but I love to use it because, well, the party doesn't prepare itself properly. There's a reason there's spells and magic items to help negate the negativities of bad weather. But I like to include weather as a random encounter. I'll run a percentage based on their location. So the chances of a really nasty storm brewing up, while slim, it happens. But if you're out there being a native son of the Midwest, if you're crossing the plain and a thunderstorm comes through and starts dropping bucket loads of hail on you, you and your horses have got to find shelter or suffer the damage. And sometimes it's the creative uses of the skill sets that allow these players to survive those situations. Anyway, get your typical farmstead, the blurbs on the White Mountains, the Unadin riverbanks. Here we got flora and fauna again. Ice is big on that. The local agriculture, fishing, herbalism, some common herbs, rare herbs. That's something that you don't see a lot of in other systems like Dungeons and Dragons. They touch on it, but they don't go to the level that MERP does when it comes to that stuff. I think in part is because it's just a given, right? Now, excuse me. A long time ago, I played a game system which was a MUD or some variant MMPG or whatever massive multiplayer game on the internet called Gemstone 3, produced by Centronics. It's still production. It's still there. It's all text-based. There's no graphics to it, which surprises a lot of people how fun it is to play games like that, even though they're 35 years old now, in tech-wise. In Gemstone, you had this plant or moss that you could gather while you're out adventuring, and you could apply it to wounds, and it would help cure hit points. And I think in part that's based off of Anthelis or Kingsfoil that they got out of this particular game system or out of the novels, right? I don't know that, but anyway. Like I said, it covers cultures and lifestyle, interesting personas and NPCs, food and drink, commerce, the great families, the fellowships, which is their version of guilds, and it goes on and on in some detail, politics and power, of secret societies, and then we get the city overview where we're dealing with the walls and the town and the fortifications and the shops and and so forth and so on. They cover the city sewers, buildings of note. Now we're getting into a big bulk of the chapter where we go to various shops and businesses. Here it is an example, the Great Bakery. The Great Bakery's got 2.5 pages of stuff. So I imagine they want you to utilize these things as you will. And as I've said in the past installments, being what I consider, like I said, I call myself the fat man, but perhaps the lazy GM would have been better because I'm a strong believer in, like I said, taking advantage of using the material you have to save yourself a bunch of work. And the reason I say that is because why, other than just for the love of the material and to read it and to hoard it, which is, I'm guilty. I'm guilty of that. I got bookcases of it, even in my storage locker. Think about it. I get a picture of that and put that on the YouTube here, not too distant future, of my relocated storage locker, bookcases in my storage locker. But in addition to that, I've got 2 huge cabinets up here above me, full of my mostly D&D stuff because I am currently working on creating a solo game for a friend of mine and I are going to play over the internet, which is oddly enough going to be my first attempt at doing that. I've never played games via the internet. I don't know why, just haven't. Heard some references to it. In this particular style, we, Shannon and I have done this before with a different game system, and what we're doing is we're playing it in storyline format. I did a video on that. You know, gaming to taking your game to the novel level. Look it up. It's a good one. Anyway, going on about the city book of Minas Tirith. Like lots of different shops and stores and businesses. And any one of these could be pulled out of here, plucked out of here, and plopped into your world, plopped into your city on the fly to be used for an encounter, even if it's just a brief one. You know, your NPC, your player characters decide, the PCs decide to stop somewhere and do some business, or to follow up on a rumor, or check something, or just have to be loitering outside of it. I mean, you know, come on. Why would you not take advantage of a library full of material to ease your world building and your gaming? It's just convenience, right? I mean, you know, it is what it is. So I'm just continuing flipping through the various places they've got here. This is the bookbinder, the fellowships hall, house of tapestries, houses of healing. You know, these 4 pages for them. Timbrel the Ratter. Hey, what good city? What city doesn't have a ratter or two? That's not a term you hear a lot, but very important position. You know, as a matter of fact, in some of the early MUDs and a couple of some of my beginning campaigns, you know, rat hunting. It's the easiest way for a group of first level people to get some experience without really risking life and limb, so to speak. You know, you might get a disease or something, but yeah, I'll play that. You know, there's a chance because the mechanics allow for it. It's my reasoning for saying I like mechanic. I'm a mechanic heavy kind of guy, but that's kind of not so. It's a misnomer or mislead because I really more like the storyline. If a group of characters are in the mood or you know in that zone and everything's flowing, I don't like to stop the flow to have them start rolling a bunch of hey, yeah, bunch of dice, right? I just don't want to do it. Why stop the game for that if it's not necessary? I've had too many GM players that I played with, you know, who ran stuff, who did that, and it broke the flow. Now, it's a very important piece to do, or it's combat. It's kind of what you have to do, but having the mechanics, on the other hand, allows you to do that better because as a GM, I understand the mechanics the subtleties of a lot of those mechanics and how they can be interpreted. So it's not necessary for me to do that, and I can judge the characters based off of their prior roles and the level of their character and the percentage, you know, in case of a particular skill, how high it is. Whether or not they would have an immediate moderate chance for succession, no need to make a roll. You're going to, you know, it just isn't. And if you're forced to do it and then they have an utter fail or an utter success, a critical success or a critical fail, run with it. I do love my ones. As a GM, I love them. Players, maybe not so much. And hey, it's okay. It's okay. It's going to be all right, right? All right, so. And then, of course, like every ICE book, every MERP book, they include ideas for adventures. So, you know, we got in the back pages, courtiers, the city's nobility, powerful Honorians, which on a sidebar confused me for a while when I first started playing the system, started getting it. And the inhabitants of the city of Arnor, which is Minas Tirith, Honorians city, call themselves Honorians, and yet Arnor, you know, the Northern Kingdom, right, also call themselves Honorians. So there's some connections there. And I actually, from a historical speaking, that's one of the reasons Aragon was found more acceptance in ruling Gondor when he first took over than he would have if you say he showed up Leaguer, which barely gets a mention in the novels, but it's just actually a much bigger city and much more urbanized than Minas Tirith. Anyway, adventures. See, our section on adventures, and in this case, it's probably from Umber, Riot in Wooden Town. Who doesn't like a good riot, right? The Secret of the Ring. This maps, even the secondary maps are nice and well done, and those, this is more typical of a lot of newer game systems that I've seen. What do you get? You get a map like this. Sometimes it's color, sometimes it's not, but it's small and it's fixed in the book. You don't get the big fancy ones that are actually almost posters. You could frame them and put them on a wall. As a matter of fact, I did for many years. I had the Middle Earth, the overall map for Middle Earth on a wall, and over the years and several marriages, it's disappeared. I don't know what happened to it. I really don't know. I think there's so much stuff. It's moved around so many times in boxes and stuff for the past 10 years, last 14 years. I'm just grateful I still have what I have. I keep coming up with missing pieces. Well, the other day I did find the 2 rule books I have from MERP, and I'm going to do a thing on those here in the not too distant future. Anyway, Light Fingers and Lockpick, 3 or 4 different adventures. And then we got our tables, including lesser NPCs, which, once again, as a lazy GM, I love these things. I love these things because they're pre-made NPCs. I don't have to waste a lot of time grabbing people to fluff out or fill an encounter that I'm planning for some friends at the table, because I can focus on the bigger theme or the more detailed stuff geared toward them specifically, and let the world around itself fill it in. Let the sandbox develop as we go. And I have tons and tons of ready built material, and I use it over and over and over again. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten wiser in that aspect. And I will say, in some cases, I don't need to change anything. I might have to adapt the stats from this to D&D, for example, or vice versa. But I don't have to change the name, change what to do, change anything, because who's going to remember? Who's going to remember Gormil 5 sessions down the road, unless he did something really fantastic or spectacular, or somehow got under the skin of one or more of the NPCs. Just what do you want to do? Of course, we have an appendix in the back of the book dealing with terminology. It's always nice. Master encounter table, abbreviations, traditional product listing. So, awesome system, awesome books. Great detail, great artwork, well thought out for the most part. This particular book was produced earlier in the game system, or in the game's lifespan, and which shows why it shows as much work as it is. As I mentioned, when you get into the last year, and some of the modules, the adventure modules that were starting to come out, were just clones of 100 other modules for D&D and various hack and slash games. They lacked what the earlier ones did, which was flavor and geographical knowledge of Middle Earth as a whole. This will set them apart, but not this particular book. I wish I had the map to hang up there and show it to you, but Tim does. Asking for a copy of it, right? Yeah. If you can get your hands on one of these things, hey, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. And this thing, I bought this thing in 1988. I know my laptop camera here is not as expensive and elaborate as some of you vloggers got there, but look how nice it is. Look at other than a little bit of wear, there's no, and I've read this a dozen times, and I've utilized it many times over. I've even taken, made copies out of it, but I take care of my stuff as best I can. Maybe not to the degree some people do. I don't put plastic over them, but this stuff wear it out real well. It just did. Anyway, till next time, keep your sword sharp.